Welcome in. Hanna Time. I got Hanna Mancini. I have a great show for you. I'm going to talk a lot about the Cardinals, though, the Arizona Cardinals, what's been going on with the ownership. But I'm also going to bring in a great writer, historian of the Arizona Cardinals, St. Louis Cardinals, Phoenix Cardinals, Chicago Cardinals, and then also, did you know the Cardinals did not always were the Cardinals way back? I'm going to bring in the author, Joe Ziemba, coming in at the bottom of the hour. And then we'll talk sports from all across the board with Mancini, the madman itself, right here on GSBN, Global Sports Broadcasting Network. Cornelius, Brad, Hanna. All right. Let's give you a 30-second countdown to get you all warmed up for the big show. 30 seconds. 1, 2, 3. All right, welcome in. Cornelius, Brad, Hanna on Hanna Time, Global Sports Broadcasting Network. Coming up in about 30 seconds, I'm going to bring in Mark Mancini for the Hanna Mancini version, the madman himself. And you're my sponsors, folks, at the bottom of the screen. Please check them out. And I may be adding one more. Going to wait on that one, but I'm excited about the opportunity. Also, share the show if you can. This is a great show. It's very knowledgeable, informative show today, like always, but this may be one of the best ones for you to enjoy and stuff and share. All right. Let's bring in Mark Mancini right off the top here, because we got, maybe about 20 minutes with the guy. So we got to make sure he's all rocking. Hey, Mark, how are you?
Oh, man, you got that Keith Urban look, baby.
Yeah,
look at
I
you,
like
man.
I like you, Keith. I'll take Keith and his.
Yeah, man. I'm revved up, man.
Hey,
short
first
version
off the top
today, but man, we got to load the wagons up big time with the dynamite kegs next week.
Yeah, yes, and after you today, Joe Ziemba is coming in for historian. He's an author about the Chicago Cardinals, the oldest football rivalry, Cardinals and Bears, and really everything that's piggybacking with Michael Bidwell and the accusation that came out. I'm going to pop it on the screen, and I want your input on it. And then later on in the show, after everybody's gone, I'll be by myself talking more about this Cardinal situation with you all too. So, and then we got a lot more other than the Cardinals. Okay. All right. This is what been accused. If you can read it on the screen, it's fine itself. But, Michael has been accused of a lot of things, the organization itself, but, this cheating, scandalous stuff that when their general manager at the time, Steve Keim, was using a throwaway phone, disposable kind of phone, just crash and burn kind of thing. And it was basically where to hide behind the screen where Keim could actually still work when he was suspended for his DUI that he had in Arizona. It's like this whole thing is a soap opera, right? I mean, the days of our lives, the days of the Arizona Cardinals, right? It's been like this for a very long time in Arizona with the Cardinals, dating back when they first got here. There's a lot of storylines like this, it seems like. But anyway, Mark, that's on the screen. People have read it before. I just want to kind of remind where we're at with this. But when you make an accusation like that of a former employee, worked side by side with Michael Bidwell of the Arizona Cardinals, and when you get scandalous stuff involved, people don't like it. I will say right off the top, the worst scenario is maybe a draft pick here or whatever it may be. Definitely a fine would be involved, and could he get suspended? It all depends on the severity of what kind of cheating was done and how did it really benefit the Arizona Cardinals, in the long run? Did it affect the game? Like severity stuff. This is not like Patriot stuff here, right? From those days. So this is not a Spygate kind of stuff. This is a I don't know, whatever gate you want to call it.
The funny thing about this is, do we all put all the teams in a hat and start drawing one every year? If it's not the Redskins, it's the Dolphins, and now it's the Cardinals. We got the Walmarts showing John Elway the door, who I went to school with not too far away.
Yeah.
So
Even the Colts has Ursay,
and then we got the Lamar Jackson held hostage. Green Bay's over here. They want the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty, and 2 of the 5 boroughs. I mean, what's going on here, man, in the NFL?
Well, there's drama everywhere, but with the Cardinals itself, it seems like it's just it's been pretty bad for from last season through the off season with all the collar stuff and all the other issues that go around it. We've had drunk driver situations from the front office to players. We had years, history of drug issues with players, and that go back since they've been here. So it's like Cardinal fans are at the point, Mark, is like, some are saying time to sell the team. Like, this, enough is enough, right? I don't see that happening. This is a family thing, and that goes so deep that it's rooted that you don't want to be the son or whoever that relinquished this franchise.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, we saw that with the Lakers almost. That was
well, the Lakers won.
I'll tell you, if Jeannie didn't step in there, who knows where Jim would have took this organization.
Oh, yeah, that's so true. It's so true. And but that happens a lot, the Yankees won after George left, and they won 1 championship pretty much like the year he died, and they haven't been back since. Maybe, it's sometimes, for Cardinal fans, you haven't won anything, The one thing that I will say is,
a lot of bad things are going on in Arizona right now. I mean, the Warriors think they can beat the Suns in a first-round matchup, and the Coyotes are suing somebody out there.
You brought that up. Let me see if I can. I have something for you. Watch this. You're right. Let's talk about the Coyotes too, because that's a great one. Because you've been all over it, also. But let me set it up again for you, folks. The city of Phoenix, probably backed by other surrounding little towns, cities around Phoenix, like Glendale or so forth, are suing, especially Phoenix, are suing the Coyote. No, the Coyotes, the city of Tempe. It don't matter. They're trying to stop them from building this mega entertainment. It's going to blow everybody away. Everything that everybody's done downtown will be directed more towards Tempe, and anything in Glendale with Westgate and where the Cardinals play area and where the Coyotes used to play, like all those fun places to go. This is the crown. This is the jewel one, and they know it. And they're trying to say that there's airport issues again. We know they have condos over there, and that's the setups. But today, they're suing back at the city of Phoenix. They're saying this is not, so they're punching back. And this is something the Cardinals should have done years ago when they had a stadium set right in the same area where the Cardinals or the Coyotes are playing. Now, I'm going to let you listen to this. This is the mayor of Tempe, who is excited about the opportunity. And of course, they're talking about the dollar and revenue. But he hears the noise. But he's trying to. The city of Tempe, the people still have to vote on this, Mark. They still have to vote on it. And this is a big pitch. But don't be scared. Don't be afraid, because this is a smoking good deal, and he explains it.
I'm going to be voting for this, and I think it's a great deal. This site currently isn't generating any revenue for the city's general fund, which means we can't use, there's no funds being generated to hire more police officers or firefighters or human services workers. If you have an opportunity to clean up the site and have a third party come in and do it at no cost to our taxpayers, and then generate nearly $200 million of Tempe-specific revenue over a 30-year period, along with some of the other benefits, including the $50.3 million from the land sale, which would be unrestricted cash that the city of Tempe could use to fund long-needed priorities. I think that's actually a benefit to the city. We're talking.
All right, Mark, you got it?
I had no sexual relations with that woman.
And he still got away with it.
Yeah.
I know. That's a whole different topic. What's going on today with that and a previous president?
Yeah.
It's like you selectively choose. Anyway, Coyotes are suing back. The mayor's pumping, heavy gas into that machine, and they want trying to encourage the city of Tempe, the people, to vote.
Meanwhile, you have a home opener and the Dodgers are in town.
Yeah, it's exactly right. My good friend Tim Neverett is the play-by-play guy for the
great
Dodgers.
guy. He's interviewed him not too long ago, man. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he used to be the Pittsburgh Pirates play-by-play guy.
Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, and the Red Sox too. Yeah, matter of fact, I was his. You can say his producer, stage manager, everything.
Wow.
When he was doing play-by-play hockey for the Las Vegas Thunder. And I was right by his side with Clint Malarchuk and Tim Neverett, and for many years there in Vegas, a couple of years, good couple of years for that stuff. But anyway,
tell him Mark Mancini said hi, but he still hates the Dodgers.
Yeah, I know. I don't think anyway. We won't go there because Tim's a very even-keeled guy. But anyway, a lot going on in Phoenix itself. The Suns still hot with Durant. And you have the Cardinals story. It's like, ooh, is there? I think the Suns may have enough positivity, and the Diamondbacks being 3-3 and looking like a relevant team. Like they're going to play small ball, and that's exactly how baseball should be played now with the rules shifting back and stuff. But man, does Phoenix ever have we like the most what do you call it? Dysfunctional sports town? Either we have all these sports, but we got a lot of crap every year.
Well, I think times have changed. Colangelo kind of put you on the map there, and I like Jerry Colangelo. And a lot of people, can go which way on that one, but I think things go in cycles. And when you look at the Phoenix Suns, compared to what the Milwaukee Bucks just secured the top seed in the East. So
right.
They do things a little different in Phoenix compared to Milwaukee. I guess they want a splashy thing on the sports page there and bringing in Kevin Durant, but I don't think Kevin Durant's going to give you to the promised land there. I mean, I think the Warriors are going to be tough to beat. The Clippers are going to be awfully tough, and watch out for Sacramento. Those are my three teams in the West.
I watched that Clipper game, and everything. If that's the team that's playing, they're definitely going to be a tough. The West is definitely going to be the last Final Four. Should be what you mentioned. The Suns should be the last four, but that's going to be a tough battle. And do you have anything left to go up against whoever's in the East? So, but anyway, it's a heck of a storyline right now in Arizona with the Coyotes, with their turmoil, with the stadium stuff, right? The Cardinals stuff going on. With the Suns itself trading away and going for it all, that's another storyline. The Diamondbacks
you got a candidate going to try to throw her name in for the candidacy, a president, huh?
Yeah, I think everybody wants to be president because it's just like it's almost like Steve Wynn, the face of the mafia. You just got to make sure you're the cover, you're the front cover. Don't let them ever get to page 3 or 4. Don't get too deep in. That's kind of how what I'm seeing, what's been going on in our world. But anyway, we're getting way off that. And maybe the Cardinals should stop being that way. Because anyway, the Cardinals.
One thing, it's going to be an interesting division from top to bottom, and you can still win the division with the Mendoza line too. Who knows? Because
I don't know, right?
This is going to get really interesting to see who comes out of this division. We saw some bad teams winning divisions years ago. I think the Seattle Seahawks were one time won a division with an 8-8 record.
Yeah.
The Browns won a division with a below 500 record, I believe.
So was, I think, also the 7-9 Seahawks. That's the one they beat the Saints that game. So, but things can change if this guy, which I don't know if it's just a ploy or not, but Aaron Rodgers, supposedly 49ers I knew this was definitely the possibility. Everybody was thinking Tom Brady, but I'm thinking California Bear quarterback, college days, right there in the Bay Area, close to it, and all that stuff. Was this guy? Could he go back home in that one sense? And now the Niners are struggling, not knowing if any of their quarterbacks and who's their quarterback going to be. Are they willing to trade away to the 49ers to the Packers, right? Kind of like a rival, right? They've been at each other's throats for a while. But Aaron Rodgers, is this a ploy by the Packers throwing out some rumors out there, and then just to kind of get the Jets to move the needle a little bit, So
Wow.
but I think you may get White Castle out of it if you keep this going.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I still hold out that he's going to the Jets. And I'm going to stick with that one, just like going to WrestleMania Saturday and predicting that Reigns would still have the belt come Sunday night. But, when you look at Rodgers, I mean, the 49er thing's intriguing. They're finally saying, you know what, maybe we should have took Kyle Pitts as a tight end in that thing instead of going after Trey Lance. And now Purdy they're looking at kind of different.
Yes, they are.
Maybe they're kind of figuring if Rodgers comes there, it's an easy pick into the Super Bowl. The NFC's really got, to find 3-4 teams in the NFC is going to be hard.
I hear
but you got about 10, 11 in the AFC.
We're going to stay on. First, real quick, before we're going to stay on this topic real quick, but I want to make sure that that Joe Ziemba is coming up here in a little bit. He's going to talk about the history of the Arizona Cardinals from the day it started and so not up to today. This is more about the pre-Arizona Cardinal days, before they moved from,
Jim Hart, Otis Anderson.
Yeah, things like that are important.
Gobler.
But he's more about the Chicago scene and the birth
Chicago
of football,
Cardinals.
the birth of the NFL, basically, too. But it's a great history, and we're going to go through it, a lot of photographs and stuff. That's coming up, I don't know, maybe 10 more minutes or so. But right now, it's me and the madman himself, Mark Mancini. And I'll tell you, Mark, staying on topic with Aaron Rodgers, Topanga, California. He likes to hang around there, and nobody wanted to believe me. But this is a very hippie, earthy, meditating town, village, somewhat. It's like buried inside the hillside of trees and mountainsides of Malibu, basically, right? And you're about 9 minutes from the beach, right? So, but here is Aaron Rodgers today at the other day at the looking for crystals. They're like, if you look behind them, there's like these massive boulders of crystals. And there he is walking around. He's got sandals on, shorts, and a blue T-shirt. I don't know how warm it was this week, but it looks summery to me there, right? But
it was hot.
Yes, I think I just gave this place a good plug. But I've been to that place. I know exactly where it is, and there's a couple of nice little earthy restaurants that people would like to do.
Yeah.
But does he look like a guy who like he's so level-headed? He doesn't know where he's playing, where he's going next. He's just, I'm gonna get myself some crystals and meditate.
Kind of hang him from his balcony, and who knows if Elysium Fields, the new beach, was up the road, he probably hit that. Hey, I don't know, man. I don't know. Maybe he's hanging out with Bill Walton. Is there a VW bus somewhere parked outside that crystal joint?
I've seen a few of them. I still think some of them are stuck in the 60s. I still live there, but they're very, 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 very old.
Hey, you never know, man. Maybe he's got a peace sign somewhere on that back of that truck.
That's Topanga, California. If you ever been through there, it's nice. It's nice. It's fun.
Not
it's like
too
a little
far from me.
I know it is. I know you've been there, right? All right, let's move along. Big news in Denver. Did you ever think and believe it's over for John Elway with the Denver Broncos?
What?
Broncos make decision on John Elway's future. It's over.
Kind of grew up with this guy in school, not too far away, and rivalries with Granada Hills and El Camino Real. But I will tell you this. I mean, he definitely put Denver on the map, man. Red Miller. And then you had Dan Reeves. They won Super Bowls. He brought in Peyton Manning. I think once the bowling sold it to Walmart should have just basically stood back and said, hey, you know what? Let's not mess with this thing. Let them run it. We'll put the money behind it. But they were more in tune of keeping abreast on top of people shopping at Walmart and stocking toilet paper and paper towels, and they wanted to do that with the Denver Broncos. So you go figure.
Well, Elway's out. Contract expires. They want to move on. The ownership wants to move on. I'd be curious to see what the new ownership does, and how they look at this. And maybe Elway didn't want to come back. He's older, and maybe he's tired. But he did bring 3 Super Bowls, 2 as a quarterback, 1 as a front office guy there, and then he lost. He lost one, right? That embarrassing one to Seattle. So, he lost a lot of embarrassing Super Bowls. It seemed like, but he is, when you think of the Broncos, it's Elway, right?
Well, I'm sure they had a party in Cleveland today when he said he had enough.
But that's what great ones do. They they leave their mark in all these cities along the way, and then some of them in these big moments. That's what greatness does. And but Elway, multi-millionaire, life set, great, whatever. He was a New York Yankee. Would have been a Yankee if that whole trade thing.
He want to go to the Colts.
He was playing for the Yankees in spring training and everything. Yeah. He was going to be their starting right fielder. And he was going to play with Mattingly, Ricky Henderson, Dave Winfield. Like, it would have been it's a George Steinbrenner lineup. But Elway had a nice career, and if he's retired like that, besides his car dealerships, all right, okay, all right. Here's somebody that may go broke. All right, Rihanna. Not only she's getting criticized for what her halftime performance was, but she rented a home from a man in Arizona for $500,000, $500,000, and it's enough for this guy's mortgage for 2 years. Wow. $500,000, man. Like, seriously, who paid for that? Like, that's even, I don't know, get it. I mean, are they that freaking deep in trillions? Like, it's $500,000 for a house.
They could drop a quarter of that on our show.
Right. I mean, that guy must have rented it for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and he made $500,000. Like, if that's maybe he rented for 3 nights. Like, who cares?
How much did the Super Bowl pay her? Yeah,
that's true. So and then she gets to write that off, like, like taxes. Like, see how it is. And plus, as long as you wear red, it seems like everything's going to be good in your life.
Yeah.
All right. I got a few more minutes. Like, Joe's in the green room. We're going to talk Cardinals here in about 5 minutes or so. But and then we're going to go through the history of it all. We got a lot of images, Mark, and I know you would love to be a part of it. That's like basically what it is.
Yeah.
It's how we should have found that music. That would have been pretty cool.
Wow.
But is that music copyrighted by somebody? I don't even know.
I don't know. I don't know. Should be. It's great. But the Cardinals history, man. If you're tracing it back to Chicago, but I remember the St. Louis ones with Jim Hart and all those guys.
Of course, we love
Bud
those teams. Yeah,
yeah.
They were a playoff team. They just couldn't get over the hump and do things in the 70s.
Only team that's lost their football team twice. St. Louis.
They lost 3 teams.
Yeah.
All right. No, wait. You're right. Twice. I'm sorry. Yeah.
The Rams and the Cardinals.
Yeah. All right. That's pretty bad, actually. All right. I still want to go through this with you, and then it's all Cardinals from that point on. And okay. So we watched the women's final championship game. These 2 girls. Okay. Caitlin Clarke was not bothered by the hand waving thing and just didn't see it as a big deal. She said it never criticizes for what she did. It's just one of those I'm just one of those, what is it? Competes. She just competes, and she's competed, and I'm a big fan of hers. And she just, she said all the right things, and a lot of people were angry at the other side of the story with Angel Reese, is because of the way she did it and kind of like taunting version of it. And some people felt like that was a little too much to chase somebody across the court and just try to make a bigger statement, where really she didn't do it to any of your teammates. It was other, but it is what it is. And it's just like a weird whatever. And people got racially over it. Like,
oh man.
Okay. Racially over it. I know. So then this continues. Day after day, Caitlin, the best college women player that we've seen in a long time. You can probably name a few of them, but this was one of those.
Diana Taurasi, Becky Hammond, Sue Bird. I covered all those.
Those are, and then you have even further ones like
Nancy
and
Lieberman.
right, and Drysdale, right? Like she was awesome.
Yeah.
um,
Drysdale was in Ann Drysdale.
yeah, she married Don.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Ann
so
Myers.
Ann Myers, Caitlin Clarke, officially on her official website and page, like online somewhere. This is she talks about unity, and this is well before these girls played each other. This is something that's been out there, and I found this. What do you see about all this racial stuff that was thrown at the fact that you were supporting the white girl because of what a black girl did, right? And all this stuff going on, right? But Caitlin keeps taking the high road and the middle road, and I'm okay with it because trash talking don't bother me.
No.
But look at the photograph with all that racial stuff going on. This is well before it. This image, this painting, whatever it is, there's like one white person in it and three other colored people, right? I don't know. It looks like black people, most of them, right?
Right.
That just speaks volumes about. So we just put this all. If it's between her and the other girl, that's it. Why do you all got to get involved in it, right? And then you see how much they share about that. All right, Mark. So now, before I finish, I know this is a lot, but I want to get it in because I know you got to scoot out of here too. I want to play this video for you. So for all the people who got hot and bothered about criticizing Reese about what she did to Caitlin Clarke,
right,
and then became a racial thing, and like this is a white black thing, which is I'm tired of that, because what happens if it's reversed? What happens if it's on the other side? It happened. Matter of fact, it was grossly happened. It happened. This is not even close. And I'm going to show you two photographs and the video of Memphis against Bowling Green at the end of the game. And the Memphis girl clocks as they're shaking hands and sportsmanlike clocks the girl, knocks her down to the floor. Almost looked like they knocked her out for a second there. But nobody got upset about that. There was no, racial, racist, anything. The news, nobody cared about it. But a hand waving thing, people got all upset. Like we picked the stupidest stuff, right, to fight over.
Well,
for one.
I think the two most lost words in today's society, and people can say whatever they want about them, but they're completely lost, is accountability and communication.
Right. And you're right.
Communications every day on a job or whatever, and accountability is we create gray areas, and that's a sad thing in today's society. It should be black and white as far as how you handle punishment. And
the Memphis player,
gray areas, becomes a problem. It's sad.
Yeah,
I don't care what color skin you are. If I was coaching a team, that person be thrown off the team. Bottom line,
Mark,
they'd have to transfer out somewhere because they're not going to play on my team.
She was charged, Mark. The Memphis player was charged for punching the Bowling Green player in a handshake line following the women's NIT matchup, not the NCAA women's side, but the NIT side of it, right? But nobody's paying attention to that whole. That's kind of like a buried basketball. That's the secondary tournament for the teams that couldn't make the big show, the big dance, right? So she gets charged for that, right? But again, nobody's talking about it. This is, if there are people doing, I'm tired of it. I'm just trying to show balance to this thing and how way off people are getting into. All right. So this is the young lady also who's getting off the floor and shook up there. Okay, now let me play the video, and it's going to come in many different versions of it. But I have to show it because I want to show proof of how we just we get so engaged in stuff, and the media picks on stuff that they choose. I'm tired of it. Okay, because this story, I saw this story, Mark. Okay. Now we're going to see it again. Nobody talks about this. And this is about balance. It's just, here it comes one more time. You just see it because this has nothing to do with hand waving, but nobody wants to talk about this. If you're going to go down that road, and bring that into the storyline, a narrative about racial stuff, where the heck was this story? Where the heck was it? Right? You saw that, right? So I'm just bringing balance to what all this other hyped up stuff about, Reese and Caitlin and all this hand waving
Well,
stuff, and who did what.
and I don't want to go the other way on it, but being born Catholic, how do we have 160 priests across this country that abuse 600 children, and everybody looks the other way?
Oh, it's what side of the fence you on?
Started on that one.
There's evil and there's good. And it's like, and a lot of them are tiptoeing on the line and they're trying to pull you off of it. All right. All right, Mark, let me see. Anything else left? And we'll move on. One more thing, Joe. And then Joe's in the room. He can hear us. But Andre Agassi.
I'm excited, man. My Pirates are 4-2, man. We just swept Boston. Now they're chirping in Beantown. I said, big city bridesmaids, man, move over. We got to get back to Pittsburgh. And I let somebody know that I forgot my broom at Logan Airport. Can you send it to Pittsburgh?
Ah, you're funny. Hey, the Pirates, they have a lot of mojo right now, the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yeah.
It's early. Everybody gets excited. 160,000 games left.
Wait till the Yankees come to Pittsburgh.
Oh, of course. Everybody wants a piece of the Yankees. Everybody does. All right.
Yeah, well, the Mets before I let you go, the Mets couldn't get out of Milwaukee fast enough.
They're a mess, man. They spend a lot of money on big arms that are not producing, and they're tired old arms, and that's everybody had a nice on print, but
wow.
That's not that's how different. This is not playing quarterback in the NFL.
No,
at that age. So anyway, we'll wait for the Mets to figure that out. If not, they're going to be a big story for the summer. I know. All right, Mark. I know you got to go. We went a little bit over. But I appreciate it.
I can't wait till next week, baby, man. We got more time, and I wish your next guest in here, man, pleasantries and everything. Love to hear that Cardinal thing. I know you send it over to me and everything. And God bless this show, man. The Duel in the Desert, baby.
Thank you, Mark. All right, buddy. See you next week.
Always a pleasure.
All right, man. Mark Mancini's over and out on the run, and just like that, we're going to segue into Joe Ziemba, the author and writer and whatever of the historian. I'll just say the historian. Let's get to the point of the Cardinals, the NFL Cardinals, right? Hey, Joe, how are you? Can you hear me? I think he's muted. Can you hear me? All right. Is your mic on? I'm not quite sure if your mic's on. There it is. I can hear you now. There you go. All right, you can hear me. That's it. Now you can hear me, right? Okay, Joe. All right, so we're gonna talk about this, Joe, about the Arizona Cardinals, not about what's happening recently, but ownership does go back a very long way that you're familiar with. Can you hear me, Joe? Thumbs up.
I can. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. I appreciate that. All right. So we're good. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. And nice to see you again. We've met a couple of years back, and I was very familiar with the story in the book and your history of it. And there's more to it, though. And I noticed you added some more things. I think you found stuff, and I'm curious what you're going to say. But let me. This is the first thing. This is your cover. Okay, I want to put this out there for everybody. If you're a big Cardinals fan, and which I know a lot of you are, this is his book. This is the title. Joe, where can you find that real quick before we get into this whole storyline?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is Amazon has them, and they're on sale now for a brief time only. So how about that for a plug?
All right, Joe. Joe is a Chicago guy, long history, long family line and stuff, and loves his Chicago and loves the history. But for whatever reason, he'll explain his love and what hooked him about that, the oldest rival, Bears and Cardinals. But not only that, the beginning of the NFL and how it all started to materialize with club teams and things like that. And Mark, I believe I have it in Joe. I'm sorry, Joe. I think we have it in sequence. Is this photograph right there? Is that like the first thing out of the blocks that we want to talk about?
Yeah, this is the 1900 Morgan Athletic Club, a year after the team started as the Morgan Athletic Association.
Okay, so this is the beginning of it right here.
Correct, yes.
So these are your Arizona Cardinals' very first team, or in that line of family there, right? This is it. This is it. This is the roots. If you're gonna do a movie on the roots of the Arizona Cardinals, this is it. Okay. All right, I'm going to move along. We're going to pop on this one here. This is a Cardinals team champions. What year was this, Joe?
This would be 1902. In fact, that photo we just showed from 1900 was really the only year the football team was part of the Morgan Athletic Club. In 1901, they took on the name of the Cardinals Social and Athletic Club. So a lot of people think they got their name from old uniforms, but it was actually just the name Cardinals for their athletic club, which is pretty common in Chicago, where there was an athletic club pretty much on every block on the south side of Chicago. But these guys were the first to really venture outside the city limits. They played a game in Michigan City, Indiana, and they called themselves in 1902 the champions of Illinois. We're not sure why. There were no playoffs, but it looks good there on the chalkboard.
Oh my God, participation trophy? Like, don't go there, please not. All right, but all right, I left that on the screen a little longer than I would have, but that's the. All right, we're gonna move along. Joe, you are the historian of this franchise in the early days, and I know you know a lot about the Arizona days, but your story is about the previous stuff, and the one thing we always talked about is and I always talked about this, is embracing your past, embracing the past of your franchise. And I don't believe the Cardinals fully really reached out. I know that you've gotten acceptance with them with everything recently too, and you can talk about that. It was a big story out here in Arizona itself, but it's not about that. It's more about players. There's some great players, and it just seems like something is like they don't embrace it enough, or it's whatever reason. Because there's an old history here. There's a lot of great history here, and yes, it's out there, but there's other players, and this is important that even your book and your historian of this, really, you're the guy. Every Cardinal fan needs to talk to you and understand their history, because you know everything from the string on a football, right? All right. So follow up with that, and your excitement that with the Cardinals and the relationship that you just connected with recently too, how things move forward.
Yeah, I was really pleased. Tim Delaney of the Cardinals and Darren Urban asked me to come by, and we talked for a program they're putting together. But so it's kind of a reconnect, because Bill Bidwell, back in the 90s, late 90s, when my first book on the Cardinals came out, was very receptive to what I was doing and very interested, and had a nice chat with Michael Bidwell last week, who was interested in the history. So I think the team is really embracing its history a little better. Maybe they always have, but and a lot of the NFL, I was talking to another author the other day who was saying, it seems like the NFL, if you're before 1970, there's not much coverage of it. And maybe there shouldn't be after 50 some years, but I think it's the truth. I think the entire league, even with the 100th anniversary, didn't really step back enough to honor those who really were there at the beginning. Of course, the Cardinals and the Bears are the only two original teams, but the Cardinals will go back to 1899. So 21 years, even before the NFL started. So, I'm really pleased with all the help I've been getting from the Cardinals, and looking forward to having further working relationships in the future.
But this is part of, with all the history of NFL and all the nostalgia and things and Hall of Fame stuff. This is special what you've done, right? And not a lot of people have recognized it. It's in the book somewhere written, in the media guide and stuff, but never the detailed storyline of how things moved along and other heroes and other greatness that passed through. And we're gonna go through it tonight. With you, we're going to go through all these photographs that I was so blessed that you sent them, so we can, give a visual as we're talking about it, so the fans can actually kind of relate more. And they may have seen stuff like this, but your stories are going to be a lot different from what you read. A lot different. All right. I don't know. Did I show this one yet? Yeah.
Oh no, this is a rare one actually. This is, I believe, 1917. So it's the first time this has really been shared. And the reason I got a hold of one of these photos is that one of the nice things about doing the research about the Cardinals is, even today, I heard from a great niece of one of the players from 1920. And this photo came from the family of the general manager of the Cardinals way back in 1917 through 1919. and they've kept all his original records, which I was allowed to use for this last book. So finding these photos and hearing from folks, in fact, the granddaughter of Chris O'Brien, the original founder of the team, she's been really helpful. And I see her every so often. So the people are out there who've always wanted to learn more, not only about the team itself, but about their family members that were participants with those early teams.
Mark, I keep calling you Mark. I'm so sorry because I just left Mark on the show here. It's like, all right, but I'll get over it. I'll get over it. Anyway, another photograph. I want to go through them all. We're gonna move fast. It's not like
Sure.
a slideshow kind of thing, but it may kind of resemble it. Okay. All right. Let's roll to this next photograph.
We are in 1920, the first year of what would become the National Football League. And in the very top row to the right is Chris O'Brien. And all the way to the left is his brother Pat. So those were the two who really stayed with the team as it changed names over those first 20 years. But better than the National Football League title, which was the American Professional Football Conference at the time, they declared themselves the Western champions because they were able to defeat the Chicago Tigers and the Decatur Staleys. So let's claim a title where we can.
Is that the second time they claimed one?
Yes.
That's okay. That's all right. All right. I mean, there was no NFL then. Okay, but the Cardinals still have a couple of championships under their belt that you'll talk about here in a second. This is this one of them, or is this
This looks like the 1944 team, and that was a combination during the war years of when teams combined. The Eagles and the Steelers combined in 1943, and after that experience, the Bears and the Cardinals decided they wanted to combine, but the league said no, it'd be too tough a team. But this was the Cardinals and the Steelers, called the Card-Pits. They were so awful, probably the worst team in NFL history. 0-10, didn't even come close to winning a game. In fact, the newspapers eventually changed and shortened their name from the Card-Pits to the Carpets. And why not? Everyone walked all over them like a carpet.
a big snowstorm game, blizzard-like conditions, and it looks like they're trying to pull the tarp off the field. But talk about this day in history.
Yeah, this was 1948, the NFL championship. And everyone remembers just recently here at the Glendale, the Super Bowl was held. Beautiful conditions. We got a roof over it if we needed. But this is the 1948 championship game between the Cardinals and the Eagles in Philadelphia. The night before, a horrendous snowstorm started. And here's something I will guarantee we'll never see again. Before the game, the players on both teams not only shoveled off the field, but got together with the groundspeople and got the tarp off the field so the game could be played. So unfortunately, the Cardinals lost 7-0 when they lost a fumble deep in their own territory late in the game.
It happened a lot lately, last couple of seasons, I guess. This was like a circle of players on a 1925 Chicago Cardinals team here. What's so special about this one?
This was the first championship of the Cardinals. It's been contested a little bit by folks from Pottsville, Pennsylvania, who claim they won the title. And what I got with this book, one of the main things I wanted to do was go into some of the legends and even the fallacies and find out all I could about Pottsville and Chicago that year. And so the Cardinals won the title with the better record. Chris O'Brien, who was then functioning as the owner, he decided not to claim the title because there was so much going on back and forth. Pottsville was kicked out of the league for playing an I guess, a championship, not a championship game, an exhibition game with the Notre Dame All-Stars, the Four Horsemen. And so because of that, Joe Carr, the commissioner, booted Pottsville out of the league. Cardinals were entwined with scheduling extra games, and everyone who I talked to before thought this was illegal because it was the championship game was posted between Pottsville and the Cardinals in first week of December, but it wasn't. 8 teams played more games because the league had a deadline of December 20th, 1925. So it's a bit controversial, in my opinion, after really looking into it deeply, that there's much more than that game between the Cardinals and Pottsville going on. And probably the worst part was Pottsville scheduled this game, thought the team would make a ton of money playing the Notre Dame All-Stars, but the promoter ran away with all the proceeds. So neither the Pottsville Maroons nor the Notre Dame All-Stars got their full payment.
Wow. Wow. That's, all right. That's pretty. All right. What's this Cardinal doing here on this logo? This Chicago. Look at this guy. This guy looks like it's ready for like the current times, man. This guy looks brutally good.
I love this logo. It's the one the Cardinals used in the 1950s before we saw a lot of the great designs on the team uniforms and helmets, etc. So yeah, that looks like a powerful Cardinal. I wouldn't want to get in his way, that's for sure.
I do like it, and you know I know the Browns brought back an old logo this past season from the '60s. This would be kind of cool if they brought that. If I saw that, I'd be like, wow, we just saw that with Joe, you know, and
yeah.
But something like that, and people, you know, very visual. I think it'll be very. I think this logo would be acceptable in a nostalgic way. You know, I know it says Chicago and that kind of, but you can still bring the guy back.
Oh yeah,
and you know, you don't have to put you don't put Chicago out there. You put Arizona, and that's fine.
Yeah,
You're good.
yeah. It's a fierce-looking Cardinal.
All right. So, you know, people got to remember the cardinal bird on the helmet was changed to make it look meaner and a little bit more intense. You know, in the recent times when they changed that logo itself of the bird eye itself. But that was one of the things. The Cardinals didn't look tough. You know, the logo, like whatever it was, and I guess it helped. I don't know. You know? All right. This looks like a lot of fun going on in this photograph.
Yeah, the Cardinals won the championship in 1947. That's Coach Jimmy Councilman in the front there. And they really weren't given much of a chance to claim the title that year. In fact, it went down to the last game of the regular season when they played the dreaded rivals, the Chicago Bears. And one of the highlights, I think, in the book was talking about that game, how Councilman came up with a trick play to defeat the Bears. The very first play of the game, he had this great idea of lining up his fastest halfback against the Bears' slowest linebacker. It was great. They looked forward to practicing it. Thought it would work, except the Cardinals receiver, Babe Demenchev, his wife was giving birth, and he spent the week before the game staying in the hospital, sleeping on a folding chair. And Jimmy said Coach Councilman said he wasn't going to bother him, but he got him out there. They never practiced the play. They talked about it on the chalkboard. And sure enough, first play of the game, Cardinals got the ball in their own 20, and Paul Chrisman sailed a deep pass, and the Babe ran under it, gave him the lead over the Bears. They held on to win and won that Western Conference. So, yeah, it was great.
A forward pass. All right. Who in that photograph? Did you point him out, or did I miss that?
Yeah, Jimmy Councilman's in the front, the coach. You know, the other guys, it's hard to say who they are with all the makeup and everything, but I'm sure some of those guys that I should know, but yeah.
That's okay. That's all right. I mean, the makeup part, I remember when I was playing ball way back when, it was either like shoe polish.
Oh yeah,
under the eyes, or we would we would burn the cork of like a wine bottle or something. I don't know what, and use that for the ashes to take off their reflection. And you know, there was a lot of day games. You know, there was really no night games, right? So there's a lot of sunshine and bright winter sun, a lot, you know, whatever. So that was very common. You know, now but now we have a lot of night games, and the lights in the stadium have the same effect, and that's why guys still wear it. So it's you know, it's still okay. What's going on here?
Well, this is 1956 at Wrigley Field in Chicago, and the Bears and the Cardinals again getting into one of their great brawls. And I love the poetic way that the journalists used to cover these games by stating that, say, such and such of the Bears deftly imitated, say, Floyd Patterson, and dodging the punches from the agile Cardinal halfback or something. But that was it. The fans jumped out on the field, and pretty soon order was restored. But the boys always had a great time fighting on the field, and then went on for a couple of beers afterwards.
Well, I was going to wait. Is this a Bidwell? I don't know.
This is Chris O'Brien. Yeah, Chris O'Brien.
Okay. I didn't want to look it up. I just was trying to roll with it.
It's it's 100 and some years old, but it's a new photo of Chris O'Brien I just found recently. In fact, I found it after the book came out. I wanted to use it, and it's a great photo. It was in some kind of Chicago baseball book, because he was also a baseball manager. But yeah, that's Chris O'Brien. We can trace the lineage of today's current team all the way back to him and his brother and one other guy who started the team in 1899. And he kept the team until about 1928, 29, when he sold it for $12,500. And I mentioned his granddaughter has been really helpful to me. And I show this story. I tell the story when I give talks around the area. And she was at one of them, and I was a little hesitant to talk about what the team is worth today, which is, what is it, $4 billion, I think, or something. And she said, "No, don't worry." She said, "My grandfather was a great football man, but not so good at business."
Well, he couldn't tell what was going to happen over 120 some odd years later.
Right. Yes.
That the value of a franchise is like, I guess he knew he had something special to create and had the vision of it all, right? And to have this game of football being played and calling it football. Was it always called football? There's different storylines to that, but here we are, and the history of the NFL goes, like 1899. You said it, and this guy right here, had the vision of this whole entire thing. Okay, now question.
Yes.
Was there like they're the first team, and who would they play? They would scrimmage each other. Like, how would this play out?
Well,
Like
there
early
was,
on?
in the early days, there was the Chicago Football League, which was other semi-pro teams. There might have
18
been,
what? Like 1890 or
1899, yeah. There might have,
Okay.
there were probably, I found some going back to say 18, well, high school was being played as early as 1890 or so in Chicago. So the game was still not looked upon favorably if you played football after you got out of college. In fact, there's a fun story about the Cardinals in 1920 having some players that they used who put makeup on their hair. When there's one guy who had orange hair, red hair, and which is fine and good. They didn't want to be recognized and maybe ostracized, but it was a hot day, and pretty soon the shoe polish was dripping down his face and out of his hair, and he kind of got caught. But
But why was it? Was it like you're a dummy kind of thing, in a very stereotype trend back in those days? Like, what was considered like you didn't have a brain and you weren't smart enough or something, and you just had to use your muscles? Is that that it?
That was part of it, and they just thought, unlike baseball, where it was okay, whatever you did, you could play Major League Baseball, but if you played football, which was considered something that you did only if you're desperate, because there were criminals and bad people involved in professional football. Who would go and accept money to play football, of all things? That's a college sport. So that's where a lot of the controversy came at that time. Eventually, thankfully, it went away.
And this next photograph surely helped the franchise and really putting them more on the map, right?
Yes, this is Patty Driscoll, an All-American at Northwestern. Got kicked out of Northwestern for playing professional baseball for the Chicago Cubs, but then started playing for the Racine Cardinals, which was the name of the Chicago Cardinals before they changed that name. But I love this guy. He was only about 5'7", 5'8", great drop kicker. Held the record for the longest field goal in the league for many years, and it was a drop kick. The fact he was the highest paid player in the league back in the early 20s, he made $300 a game, which was a lot more than most of the guys got. They got $10, maybe $25 a game. Of course, that's $19, $20, but Patty was a big name. And one of the fun stories in the book is how George Halas wanted him on the team. They had been teammates at the Great Lakes Naval Training Center during World War I, and he really wanted Patty. And so in 1922, he offered Patty not only a contract to play with the Bears, but also part ownership. And I was so lucky to find the original incorporation papers. And it showed that Patty Driscoll, according to the state of Illinois, they think he's still one of the owners of the Bears, although the league got a hold of that information and told Halas to back off. They started the NFL, so there would be no roster tampering, but George Halas thought he would try anyway. But that really, really put some ammunition on the fire and the rivalry between the two teams.
That's a great story. That's a great story. How the NFL was trying to get into the control mode, or at least protect what they were trying to do, and trying to recruit a player and giving him some percentage of an ownership stuff to get the best players. Yes, of course your league it wouldn't have any parity, so it makes a lot of sense. So that I give, but it's those were the times, and sports was a lot of gambling and underground, a lot, the White Sox. I mean, there's a lot going on in Chicago. Okay. There's a lot of
Yes.
mobby people there
Yeah.
putting money down on stuff. And, it was hard to be an athlete in Chicago, I'm sure, back in
Yes.
those days. All right. Here's another awesome football player in the Cardinals history.
Oh, Ernie Nevers still holds the record today for the most points ever scored by one person in an NFL game. In 1929, Ernie scored all the points in a 40-6 win over the Bears. He not only ran with the ball, but he was also their kicker. And so for some reason, that record has never been topped. Several players have now scored 6 touchdowns in a game to equal that record, but Ernie added 4 extra points to give him that 40 for the night, for the day, excuse me. And so, yeah, he's an amazing player. Later coached the Cardinals, didn't do quite as well as his playing days, and coached in 1939. I think they won 1 game, but he coached earlier in the decade and did pretty well, did a little better.
Looking at this kind of an athlete and the all-around football player he was, we like to give the GOAT terms to people, because they win championships, but this is a guy who did everything on the football field. I mean, so when we look at the Bo Jacksons of the world, right, these multi-sport athletes and greatness, you make it sound like Nevers could have played any sport, would have been the home run champion and, batting title, but when it came to football and for his team, he was probably the best all-around football player in the game.
Yeah.
And when you want to compare that to what we look at today, like the Otanis of the world, in baseball, Nevers is right there. But again, we don't talk about the deep past of sports and greatness like this. This is all the time. He would never even make a team, but in the day, in his era, right? That's what you got to go by. And I don't know if people can understand all that. That's why Babe Ruth is the greatest, because he just destroyed his competition and that with numbers and stuff like that. There was nobody even close. When you put up as many points as this guy did in the game and dominate a game, why weren't there other guys doing that? So elaborate more on his greatness, Mr. Nevers.
Well, Nevers, what a lot of people don't realize, he also played professional baseball. He was a pitcher for the St. Louis Browns, and he was a professional basketball player for a team in Wisconsin. So he had no off season.
That's awesome. And but nobody, again, if you don't talk about it, and if it's not, in the rafters in the stadium somewhere, no one even knows this guy or the media guy that you somehow see it in page 56 or something, it's hard. But this is one of the greatest athletes in American history. And he played for the Cardinals. And it was, there's another guy who was pretty good at playing for the Cardinals for a tad bit too. But this is a great story, and it's buried. It's buried. This is one that bothers me the most out of all the history of sports itself. This guy doesn't even get talked about. So, all right. Who else we got on the list here? Oh, this is a great story.
Duke Slater played for the University of Iowa. He didn't like to wear a helmet. There's great pictures of him taking 3-4 guys out at a time as an offensive tackle. He went both ways. Unfortunately, when he got to pros, he was a victim of the racism at the time, where teams in Kansas City refused to play against him. So the Rock Island Independent said, we won't use him then, which is horrible. But eventually found his way to the Cardinals, the Chicago Cardinals. And in that game with Ernie Nevers scoring 40 points, Duke Slater was the lead blocker. Nevers ran over him for just about every one of his touchdowns. Just a great man. Later became a judge in Chicago, coached kids football on the south side of Chicago. And ironically, his offices as a judge, or his chambers, were on the same site as Normal Park, where he played with the Cardinals in the 20s. That was later destroyed, knocked down, of course, for renewal and to build a police station. But yeah, there's finally he got into the Pro Football Hall of Fame a year or so ago, which was so overdue. It was horrific, but grateful that he got in. What a great player.
Yeah. But again, another one of those stories about history and not, welcoming your past. This is a historic time for this man and for an organization that continues to show that they're very open with diversity, the Cardinals organization itself. So, and so this is dating it now, it's still there. But you said he was so dominant. Was he one of the greatest linemen of all time, like in his era for sure? Like, how would you measure, like, how, we're trying to measure people up, but these are stories that we don't talk about. So we don't know. And then we don't know how to measure it to other players back in those times because nobody ever talks about it.
It's true. I think one of the measuring sticks we do have is being named All-Pro, I think 8 years during his career, which was pretty phenomenal. He was always selected as one of the best at his position, as tackle, going both ways. So, but even that, you have to rely on. I think that's one of the things that people talk about the Hall of Fame, or why aren't we honoring more of the early players? Well, the voters weren't around then. I certainly wasn't. And we don't know, we can't see them. We have to really dig into it, find out their stories, and find out from people at the time what they said about them. And that's kind of what I try and do with my research, is to not put stories I heard about, but I want to prove everything that goes in there. And Duke Slater, in my opinion, if he's not the best tackle of his era, or maybe of all time, it'd be tough to find one who was. And he just was one that other teams couldn't deal with because he was so omnipresent in the backfield of the other team.
All right. When you see what's going on in sports today, and you may be able to answer this the best, because I have an idea in my head what I'm thinking about why there's so much greatness and dominance in the old days, is because a lot of people weren't looking for sports. It didn't pay a lot, right? It was a tough man, it was the rough neighborhood kid who looking for a way out. Sports was doing that. Baseball became glamorous, but the other sports was all about, boxing. There's nothing to study. You just go punch. And same thing with football. You just it's a battle. So there weren't as many great ones around to play the game, to measure up, for what like Nevers did, with what he did, right? So where there's only a few handful, or were there a lot more, for what you were able to, calculate throughout the years with this great story?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is there could have been a lot more because of this prejudice against pro football. When the draft started in 1936, which was intended to bring some more parity to the league, very few of the players that were drafted actually played in the National Football League. And you think before then, when salaries were low, if they even got a salary, they used to pass the hat after the game to get a few extra dollars. It was pretty remarkable. Even look into 1940, and I've started my research years ago because I found out my dad was drafted by the Cardinals. And he got, and you've probably heard the story, $110 a game, but he had to supply his own shoes and shoulder pads. That was the NFL in 1940. So he could make more money coaching high school football than he could have made playing professional football. So that was another issue. I think the financial part of it, even into the 50s and 60s, guys were working another job, either in the off season or concurrently with playing football. They just weren't making enough money.
It's amazing in a way of how sports or leagues were able to find a way to survive and keep going through when wartime, and you had crash of the market, back in those days, and to be able to continue through where players couldn't get paid. The guy who didn't have a job didn't have enough to, and he was either working on the docks or he's going to go play ball. It's like some people who are playing arena football, they don't get paid a whole lot, right? And you got to work another job or something else or two, it was just another way to put, food on the table at that point, and you do whatever you can to get out there. So you make a good point. A good point.
I'm even thinking back to 1920, a good lineman named Willis Brennan. I just heard from one of his relatives today. He worked full-time as a Chicago cop while playing with the Cardinals. So he had to work his shift around practice with the Cardinals. But these guys played for the love of the game. No protection, no helmets, no mouth guards, and no medical attention. So you had to be a brave man to play professional football at the time. And thank goodness those pioneers kept it going all those early years.
All right, we're going to move along. I don't know. I'm going to show this one first, but this next one, the second photo I'm going to show you is okay. All right, here we go.
Yeah, this is Jimmy Councilman, coach of the Cardinals, and being welcomed by the owner, Charles Bidwell. And it was a great pairing of those two. Councilman came on board in 1940, lasted a couple of seasons, then decided to get out of football. He had been previously an owner and a coach and won a championship. But he joined the Cardinals. It didn't work out quite the way he wanted. Of course, when the war started, players were leaving. That's when we had the merging of the teams. And the Cardinals, unfortunately, at the end of 1942 through the beginning of 45, lost 29 straight games, still the NFL record for longest losing streak ever. But Mr. Bidwell wore so many hats. I did something on him recently with his love of softball, starting a girls' professional league during the war. He was involved in the racetracks around Chicago. And he really built the Cardinals, got Charlie Trippi in 1947, who we'll probably talk about, but traveled with him around the country to get him to sign. He was like the Michael Jordan of football back in 1947. So those are two of the great heroes of the Cardinals franchise history.
It's amazing. The Cardinals have had a great history of greatness. And again, it doesn't get talked about. And hopefully this is, through you and through what you've done, is able to connect with the organization, that this is the great opportunity to showcase this great story, but the other part too about this photograph, it's Charles. I'm friends with Charles the third, I guess. And he's got a sports bar somewhere, I think, where the track used to be.
Oh, yeah.
It's I got to get it to you, but he's always welcomed me in there. And but that's the split when the brothers needed to decide on who gets what, the racetrack, the other stuff, the football team. And the story. And so
Yes.
Charles the third, whatever, was on that side of the fence of the racetrack and all that other, so forth. So that's my best historian moment. Okay. Because Charles told me that. Charles told me that one. Okay. But you knew most of that anyway.
Well, the best part of Charles Bidwell is that he was an officer of the Bears and a part owner of the Bears when he became the owner of the Cardinals. And so he also helped bail George Halas out. You may have probably heard that story when Halas was buying out his partner, Dutch Sterneman, and the clock was ticking, and Mr. Bidwell found a loan for George Halas during the Depression, plus loaned him some money to help him get over the hump. So it was a great story of cooperation between the two. And my book suffered a little bit because Halas and Bidwell actually liked each other. But when Mr. Bidwell passed away, the dam was broke. A guy named Walter Wolfner married Violet Bidwell, and he and Halas did not get along. So it was, that helped the book stories. There's a lot more good stories after that happened.
Yeah, it's just makes you wonder a little bit about the Bidwell family itself, and a lot of criticism over the years and so forth. But there's one thing that we keep hearing, and I keep hearing, is how big they are to the NFL. And just being the first team and the first rival games and the great players, and they try to win. There's no doubt as you try, but looking out for George Halas and just going out for great players. And this was a big deal, and looking at what's going on today with the current ownership stuff. When I hear stuff like this, Joe, there's no way in heck they're going to force anybody to sell the Cardinals. Like this is you don't understand this, how deep this is. And you kind of said it in a way where this is the NFL. The Cardinals haven't, and you would think they would carry that torch, but unfortunately it's been a lot of losing. But the fact that they were so an integral part of keeping things together and keeping some great visionaries and coaches and ownerships engaged. And I'm not far off on this. This is something that people don't understand, how big they are to the NFL, the Cardinals organization, and the Bidwell family.
No, exactly.
And the previous ownership. So because it's the whole thing, and obviously the Bidwells have the longer run, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. They do the long, and even look back to 1926 when Red Grange and his agent C.C. Pyle started their own league, and they tried to Grange tried to buy the Cardinals, And Chris O'Brien said no. And then they tried to force the Cardinals out of Chicago by putting in the Chicago Bulls in the new league. Chris O'Brien stayed true to the NFL, and the Chicago Bulls and the Grange League left after a year. They went out of business. But even then, the competing leagues that came in, how strong the Cardinals were in supporting the league and attempting to help others. So, and of course, we just talked about how Bidwell helped Hallis. Just some neat things going on where they were completely unselfish in their efforts to keep the league going.
Well, when you see guys in your audience and your stands that show up like this guy, someone's always going to say, hey, what's he doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Al Capone. What the heck does this have to do with the Cardinals?
Yeah. One of my favorite stories, and I always share this because sometimes I look back and did I get my research right? But yeah, we did. And Thanksgiving Day in 1923, the Bears and the Cardinals playing, and Patty Driscoll, who we've talked about, ran around the right end, and he was met by Joey Sterneman, the brother of Dutch, and George Hallis, who not only tackled him, but threw him face down into the ground, the frozen ground. And Driscoll got up wobbly and started swinging. He knocked out Joey Sterneman. And pretty soon players from both teams were mixing it up. Then the fans came out. And one of the best quote, as the police were breaking things up on horseback, was that a new player, Ed Healy, who had joined the Bears the week before, said, "Here I am on the field making $100 a game, and you have this Al Capone mob coming out with guns on their sides to protect their hero, Patty Driscoll." And so
Wow.
The Chicago Tribune said, well, George Hallis woke up from his haze from being knocked down, and there was a gentleman straddling him with a pistol behind his right ear. So that was football in 1923. But the best line ever was in his autobiography. George Hallis recalled that game. He said, yeah, it was a tough game. We lost 6-0. There were some fisticuffs, but he said, everyone had a good time.
Capone, I mean, mobsters, it's Chicago. It all makes sense. I'm glad nobody got shot. I mean, today looks like it's, a whole different game, but that's kind of cool. I mean, so now I don't want to speculate, right? Did Driscoll had anything like, or he's just a lovable guy that even the mob and the Pin King himself, the godfather of Capone-ish, would say nobody's touching our guy no matter what. It's like Derek Jeter in New York. Nobody touches Derek, okay?
That's right.
Elvis. Nobody touches Elvis, right? That's what Driscoll was to, so is this what it really was? Or like, because, there's a lot of people taking money as players too in these times, because it can't ignore that. And I'm not saying, I can't speculate, but anytime you see a mobster around, I mean, it's not fair because they can go to games.
This is
Capone. And I had guns on the field in a brawl. Like, oh my goodness. All right. I'm talking too much, but
I love it though.
This looks like a horrible situation because there's not a whole lot of equipment here. Right?
Yes.
But look at the shoulder pads in oh, you know what? Today they're wearing small stuff, by the way. It's kind of weird.
They are, yeah.
Big helmets, but like no shoulders and thigh pads and elbow pads. Like, you remember those? That's what it was. But he's looking at a jersey here. I've never seen this photo before, so you can dive into it.
Oh, yeah. This is the great Red Grange, who took the country by storm at the University of Illinois, made All-American all 3 years he was able to play. Back then, of course, freshmen couldn't play. And then after his last game for Illinois at Ohio State in 1925, he signed with the Bears the next day, which, first of all, the reaction was horrible because, once again, the league had been formed not to mess with the college players and not to raid rosters. And here was George Hallis signing Red Grange. And what Hallis thought, his interpretation was, well, he'll no longer play college football. Why can't we sign him? There was no draft at the time. And so the league let it go because Grange was so popular. And for the first time, the NFL was getting crowds with him on a tour with the Bears. They did 2 tours. They drew 70,000 people in New York. Nothing like that had ever happened in the NFL. In fact, the month before, the Bears played a team from Columbus, Ohio, and had 1,800 people they couldn't even get Wrigley Field. They had to play at DePaul University Stadium. So when Grange came in, things really changed. And one of the things in the book that I was so grateful for is the John Kendall and the folks at the Research Center at the Pro Football Hall of Fame allowed me to dive in many times to the Dutch Sterneman collection. Dutch was the co-owner of the Bears in the 20s and the early 30s, and he kept all the financial records for the team, and they're now been released so knuckleheads like myself can look at that stuff and get a real good idea on what salaries were and what they paid to go on trips. So we know now what Grange was paid. The contracts were there, but it was neat because the first team that he played against was the Chicago Cardinals. And this was another one of those Thanksgiving days, and Grange took the field, and Patty Driscoll, who we talked about, was a smart player. He was a punter for the Cardinals, and I was able to track down the game stats.
Really?
And he punted 18 times that day in a 0-0 tie in the snow. 17 of them were away from Red Grange. And so Grange never really got a chance. He said it was one of the hardest games he ever played in. But as Driscoll introduced himself to Grange after the game and they walked off and the people were booing, and Driscoll went home to his wife that night and said, "Boy, I can't believe they're booing that young man, Red Grange. We didn't really give him a chance." And his wife said, "No, dear, they weren't booing Red. They were booing you. That's because Patty didn't give Grange any kind of chance to run the ball." So kind of fun. But that really changed football, having Red Grange there. And this, my favorite story of that is on their tour. They went to Washington. They played a game, and they were invited to the White House. And President Coolidge was waiting for them in the Oval Office. They were brought in. The secretary said, "Mr. President, I'd like to introduce you to Red Grange and George Halas of the Chicago Bears." To which the president, apparently not knowing much about sports, said, "Well, welcome, gentlemen. I've always enjoyed animal acts."
So Chicago was the heartbeat of the NFL, the heartbeat of football, for what the history and for what you wrote about and did all your research and stuff like that. Why is Canton, Ohio, the Hall of Fame? Like it's usually the birth, and that's the birth of the NFL. It is the Football Hall of Fame, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Doesn't say the NFL Football Hall of Fame, right? Yeah. So, but there is so much history in Chicago when it comes to the NFL, for one, and the great players that we've mentioned so far and talked about, and where it all began. And we can date things back. There was always something in Chicago, like another team,
Yeah.
But Canton, I don't get it. I don't get it.
I guess the straightest, smoothest answer is that's where the league, first league meeting was held in 1920. And in Canton, Ohio. You probably heard at an auto dealer where there weren't enough chairs, so they had to sit on the side of the cars and drink buckets of beer, and supposedly paid $100 for a franchise, which we can never prove. Don't think anybody paid $100, right. But that's it. And I think Canton, when the league was, or the Hall of Fame was getting some roots and some footsteps going, that seemed like a logical place for it. But I don't disagree that it could have been in Chicago for all the history of those two teams. And the Chicago Tigers too, as I forgot, in 1920. Yep.
Think about this. We got a couple of drunk owners sitting around car dealership cars trying to decide on, and hell with it. Canton is the Hall of Fame, and nobody cared, right? Like, I mean, there are people arguing over where baseball was. It Cooperstown or was it Jersey City? There's a lot of debate on things. This is pretty definitive, but probably should have been in Chicago somewhere.
Would not disagree. Yes.
The Hall of Fame itself, and a great big city as it is too. So, all right, these great football players. This is probably one of the best sets of football players in football history and NFL history.
Yes, this is the fabled dream backfield of the Chicago Cardinals in 1947. We mentioned Charlie Trippi there on the right from Georgia. And the reason it was called the dream backfield was the first time that there were 4 All-Americans from college that were in the same lineup or for a pro team. And so we had Paul Christman from Missouri on the left, Pat Harder from Wisconsin, number 34, Marshall Goldberg from Pittsburgh, and Charlie Trippi. But number 7 there is actually Elmer Angsman, because during the season Marshall Goldberg went strictly on defense, and so they were fast. They were multi-talented. Chrisman could run as well as pass. Harder was the place kicker. Was the NFL MVP in the 40s. Of course, Trippy in the Hall of Fame now. But Angsman's such a neat story. He was a South Sider from Chicago, which made the Cardinals fans love him. He went to Mount Carmel High School and then Notre Dame. And the reason the Cardinals supposedly drafted him was in a game at Notre Dame. Again, we had no face mask or no mouth guards. That running the ball against Navy, he got hit so hard that a newspaper described him as spitting teeth out like they were kernels of corn. Sounds a little gross. But Jimmy Councilman read that story because Angsman wanted to go right back in the game, and I guess he did, and he didn't miss practice. And Councilman said, a guy that tough, I want him on the Cardinals. So he was the final piece then of the dream backfield.
Dream backfield, maybe the greatest all-around football player too, played for the Cardinals, and there's so much nice history about, the organization, and again, through you, I've been able to learn a lot more than just reading a media guide, and it's true. It's very true. And you see a lot. But I'm going to pop. Why are these ads? I'm going to slice through them real quick. These ads. So like, I like this one. It's Ramona Stadium. Right, it's talking about Ernie Nevers, the great Ernie Nevers, and it says avoid standing in line tomorrow, but get your tickets today. Where's the ticket price? I just saw it somewhere. It was like 50 cents.
Yeah,
for like whatever the cheap seats, and $1.50 for the best seats. Like only
right.
$1 difference, but I'm assuming 50 cents was a lot. Because,
yeah.
But then again, the product, it wasn't like a special thing, but there were a lot of fans still. There was still something to do, right? So, again, these I'll put this one back up. This is the Patty Driscoll one.
Yeah. 1920, and I think this is from the Rock Island or the Moline, Illinois paper, but trying to get people to come see the Racine Cardinals. And you may say, why aren't they the Chicago Cardinals? Well, at the beginning, 1917, they were incorporated as the Racine Social and Pleasure Club. I can't make that up, but that was not, it doesn't sound like a football team, but they became the Racine Cardinals because Chris O'Brien lived on Racine Avenue, and a lot of the teams in Chicago just took their streets. So we had the Westerns, the Halsteads, etc. They were the name of the team at the time. So they went down and they played an out of the city game at Rock Island, and kind of the beginning of the NFL rivalries back in 1920.
It was like a burlesque room in the locker room or something. Like
sounds like it, yeah.
Cardinals got a lot of stuff in their history. Okay, that's funny. That's a good one there. All right, we're gonna move the clock up a little bit. I think, right? So, we don't see too many 58s. Carl Dansby was one here in Arizona recently. That was part of that Super Bowl run they made. But this is another special 58.
This was Mario Tonelli from Chicago, born in Lamont, Illinois, went to DePaul Academy in Chicago, and then on to Notre Dame, where in late 1937, he made 2 runs late in the game, and Notre Dame was able to defeat Southern California. I think it was 13-7 or 7-6. But anyway, Tonelli made like a 60-yard run, then followed up with an 8-yard run for the score. But this is by 1940, he played with the Cardinals and decided to enlist. We were not at war yet, but at the time, the suggestion was you serve a year, and then you're released. And Tonelli said, okay, boys, keep that locker warm. I'll be back in a year. But unfortunately for him, he was stationed in the Philippines the time Pearl Harbor was attacked. And then the Japanese turned their attention over to the Philippines, and Tonelli, after a long battle with his colleagues, was captured and was part of the Bataan Death March, which you may have heard of, where the prisoners, both Filipino and the U.S. Servicemen, were marched 60 miles, which people say today, well, isn't too bad. They had to walk 60 miles, but no food, no water. The way they survived was putting their shirts out at night, hopefully to grab some dew from the shirts in the morning, squeezing it out so they could get some nutrition, so to speak. But one thing Tonelli had this Notre Dame ring that he wore. And when he was captured, the story was the Japanese did not allow you to have any personal items with you. You had to give them up under penalty of death. And I heard this from Mr. Tonelli himself, got to know him pretty well before he passed away a few years ago. But he said every day he would have that ring and he put it on at night when he got back to his tent and then bury it during the day. One day he came back and the ring was gone. And he was just really concerned what might happen to him. And sure enough, a smartly dressed Japanese officer spoke perfect English, came up to him. He had this big old sword at his side, and he said, "Are you Tonelli?" And he said, "Yeah, yes, I am." And the officer held his hand out, and there was a Notre Dame ring. And he said, "Is this your ring?" Tonelli said, "Well, yeah, it is." "Oh, yes, it is." And he said he was so surprised because instead of being executed on the spot, the officer gave him the ring back. And Tonelli was very grateful and
Wow.
couldn't believe that all the humanity he had seen. And said, and as the officer was walking away, he said, "Now, Mr. Tonelli, I advise you to hide that. You know the rules. You can't have any personal items." And one other thing, I went to the University of Southern California. I was there when your touchdown beat us in 1937. So it was kind of a cool story for Tonelli, who then spent the entire war in prison, including being on what was called the death ships, where the prisoners had to stand all the way from the Philippines to Japan for the prison camp. And then when they were finally released at around August of 45, Tonelli came back to Chicago. He only weighed about 90 pounds after being a 210-pound fullback for the Cardinals. He was in the hospital and got a visit from Charles Bidwell. Here's one of the stories people don't know about. And Charles Bidwell came up to him and he said, "Hey, Motts, we're glad you're doing better. Welcome back. But, you signed a contract with us that's due for renewal. We expect you to honor your contract." So Tonelli had signed a contract before the war. And because he got a contract from Mr. Bidwell, he got credit for those 4 years of imprisonment and what was a pretty ragged pension back then.
Wow.
He said, "I'll always be grateful to the Bidwell family for doing that." He did get on the field for one play, apparently, against the Green Bay Packers. And so he was just one of those gentlemen. We talk about heroes. That guy is a hero for what he went through, and he never complained about it. Having, again, very lucky to spend some time with him and hear his story. So what a guy, what a great guy.
I love it. It is one of the great NFL stories that you can talk about. And when you, again, it kind of ties into the, not quite with Pat Tillman, but it's another military situation. And I want to throw this photograph out here.
Yeah, that was a photo upon his release, and weighed about 90 pounds when he got out of prison camp.
Wow. I mean, I'm taking a moment to look at this. He's frail. I'm sure he was probably like 50 pounds skinnier than his athletic weight and stuff like that too. And his ring, his Notre Dame ring, got him.
He let me put it on once. I was so excited. I mean, I'm a bigger guy than he is, but the ring fit because he was a muscular man, and I was like, "Woo-wee!" After he told me the story. Sorry,
what
I
a
interrupted
ring!
You.
No, it's okay because Notre Dame ring. It's a Notre Dame ring, right? So it's got a lot of history to it. So it must have been heavy, right? Like, was it gold or what was it? Like,
I believe it was gold. Yeah.
That's amazing. I think I have one more photo. It's maybe still him here.
Oh, that's Motts. Yep, when he returned in uniform, when he gained some of his weight back. So,
okay, I'm gonna go back and forth. I'm sorry. Just you got that, and we got that. That's him there, and that's him there. Oh, that's him after.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So wow, good looking guy too, and he was. Do you think he could have been one of the star players, big names in the Cardinals history if this didn't play out the way it did with the war?
He might have been. He wasn't the most talented football player, but I've been able to see some of his films. And again, what can we tell looking at grainy black and whites? But he had a little combination of speed and toughness. He was, like I said, a fairly big back, over 200 pounds. He might have been. Yeah, he could have been one of the greats.
But the story is his survival, the Notre Dame connection, but also Charles Bidwell, the owner, doing what he did, and again reaching out and so forth. It's a very, very powerful story too. That a lot, again, nobody really talks about it, knows about it, or does anybody care, right? But
Yeah,
I do,
yeah.
and you know, and this is still part of American history, and people back then cared a whole lot about things like this, and we went through a lot, like 20 photos or something like that. Okay, Joe. I'm going to throw your cover on the front on this. Where is your book? I had it right here. One of your books, right?
Yes, yeah.
So this is the Bears Cardinals in the oldest rivalry. Do you go through a lot of this same stuff, or is it something different with this book?
Yeah, this book I tried to make completely different. Some of the, in other words, different quotes, different information, especially about what I wanted to do was show the Cardinals' history more accurately by finding out where some misinformation started and what it really should be. So, and then adding all that information from the Sterneman collection as kind of an intro into a story as to what happened at the time, whether it be the salaries for players. If I wanted to prove George Halas was kind of cheap, we're able to do that by showing the actual statistics of the records that are there from the Sterneman family. So yeah, it was a bit different, covering the same time frame, 1899 to 1960, when the Cardinals left Chicago.
Great stuff, man. Hey, Joe, I appreciate it. I had you on for a solid hour.
Oh,
I don't know if you knew how long we went, but that's
no, sorry.
no, it's okay. No, I was just rolling through and enjoying all of this, and then I do want to see any comments before. Oh, let me get this off the screen. You know, it's your great book too, but reach out and buy Amazon. You said, right?
Yes, or
Okay.
McFarland Publishing, who published it, buy directly from there as well.
Okay, and I'm sure we'll see a lot more of it as the Cardinals organization embraces more of their history, and with you being an integral part of it too. Now, at least the door has been welcomed you in. The door is opened for that to happen too, and it's good. I mean, all right. So let me see here. We got a lot. Oh my gosh, I have so much here. So I guess I had an Angel. Let's see here. Angel, we got Kim, we got Christine, Audra. These are all Cardinal fans. Angel says, I think Bidwell and Kime will always have a bromance. Okay. There's Vinny, there's Sasha, there's Dave Hoffman. Hey, Joe, I'm playing a gig, so can't stay, but good to see you. And Cornelius, I'm his next advertiser. Dave was at one of your seminar, or at least one of your showings of this Cardinal history, or the history of it all. And he invited me to come see you that first time way back when. And that's how it all began.
Mesa Library. Yep.
Mesa Library. Mesa Library. Cardinal fans. I think you got the Cardinal fans all revved up in a good way with this nice, it's a good story because we've been hearing a lot of negatives in the off season, and it's been hard. It's been a hard year, date wise, calendar wise for this organization, and to have you come on and talk about it, and to give some happiness and there's some love to it, and storytelling and appreciation of the organization in a lot of ways. Yes, not everybody has great moments. Even the greatest organizations have had some horrible moments and poor decisions and things like that. But this is actually a pretty good timing because it was pretty thick this week with a lot of the stories breaking. Guess I had a Jay Ness, Elizabeth, Nicole, Mark Mancini, who just left the show earlier, Rob, the Choo Choo Train. Let's see. Trying to go through. Rob is going off on comments, but I want to stay moving along. Isabel and Tucson, Alex. Hey, Alex. How does Mike cheat when we still have only 3 wins? This is the stuff we were hearing, but you're right. If you're cheating, you would win more, I guess, right? But the cheating part, I don't think really, guys, it had a major part of wins and losses in a way of direct, like if you do Spygates and things like that with the Patriots and other organizations, there were some more direct stuff. This was definitely not good, but the seriousness of it is, I would say, take a step back on it. And if there's some truth to it, still think maybe a suspension, which will probably end up taking, or not, I don't know. And then also a fine and maybe some draft picks, but, or maybe none of it. Maybe it's just something else. There's a lot more going around. So, but it just speaks volumes in a way. It's unfortunate that, is this more of what really has been going on and why there's been struggles with the organization, Joe, in recent years, trying to get this right, and Mike's trying every button to push, and it's not clicking, and now he's scrambling again, and maybe this things happen behind closed doors that you get a little desperate when you get cut like a fighter. You're cut. Once you're cut over the eye, you're desperate because you're in serious trouble the rest of the way. And that's how I felt. I knew, they're changing uniforms. I don't know what they're going to bring out, Joe. There's a shift coming with this season, and I don't know if this is all part of this negativity with, I don't know. I saw a few weeks ago with the organization with they were part of this negative players union, of organizations that are, and it's been a pretty rough punch. And Michael has been to the Bidwell family. This is a pretty big punch, and here and there, and it's a reputation, it's character, and and other players were watching this and seeing this. It's like, how do you win them over? And this is a tough scenario that he's never been in as an owner itself. But I'm glad you met him, and he's a good guy. He's a good soul. And because I met him too, and he's not a fake. He just really wants to win, and things happen, and you got to trust people, Joe, right?
Yes.
Even in those old Chicago days, you had to trust people. When Capone's watching, with his boys, there's a lot circling, the wagons, and you're just trying to win. And if you lose, you could be afraid of walking out of your own stadium. But I don't think you have to worry about it now in these days in that aspect. But the stakes are higher because there's bigger money involved. Like this is big stuff. So, and the reason why I brought this up, not for you to elaborate on that in that way, but more about something more positive, about Bidwell itself, moving forward, and the excitement that you have to share this with the organization, because you recently met with them, right?
Yes.
And it went well. We saw some things about it too, and I don't think a lot of people have really seen it or heard about it, but I want to give you the opportunity to kind of bring it back to the front again.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was very, very honored to have a visit to the Cardinals headquarters and spend some time with Michael Bidwell and Jeff Delaney and Darren Urban and some of the other folks there. Got to meet the new general manager and the new coach, and there seems to be an excitement in that building. There seems to be a lot of respect in that building as well for what's going on. And I think no one's trying to put their head in the sand as to what might be going on, but you got to keep pushing forward. And we hope that the team can rebound. We'll see what happens. These things got to play out, of course, but I'm confident the Cardinals will. I know they've got good leadership, and I think they're gonna prevail in whatever comes up in front. And hopefully, the team starts building again. And they weren't too far off 2 years ago, as we know, and hopefully will start resulting in some wins.
If you date back to the times where the Cardinals were looking to be the best team and getting the best players, and they were, and they're fine, and they have a history of it. We went through it. Michael itself, Joe, has tried and has brought in top name players and made the big trades and the big signings and stuff, and hoping to he's kind of doing what the past did in the history of the team. And sometimes it doesn't work. And so that's why I always say, just give him a break. The guy really tried, and he may not be a football mind, but you got to put people around you. And it's hard to understand who are those people. And now he has another opportunity with a whole new front office, new everything, to kind of reset everything and rebuild something. And it's got like a 2-year window before Kyler Murray really gets, a full season in, basically. So, and I'm happy for you too, by the way. I'm happy for you because you put a lot of time into all this. And, again, nobody cared about nobody talked about the Cardinals. Like, when they went to the Super Bowl, everybody said, they used the F-bomb, like they're going to the effing Super Bowl. It's like the Cardinals are going to the effing Super. Like, it was like, that was it, and then it was like, remember when the Saints got to the Super Bowl and actually won it, it was kind of like one of those things. It's like the loser kind of mentality, or at least that's in Arizona. That's what people saw. Like they had like one winning season, right? Or one winning season. And I think they had one season where they tied, something like that, and before they went to that Super Bowl, I think they had just 2 years with never being below 500 since they came to Arizona. at the
Yeah.
end of the season. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not nice living in
Mhm.
Arizona with the Cardinals, and and then this comes up again because the history, what they see is the Arizona history, but there's a lot of good stuff beyond prior to that too. So
Yeah. Yeah. Team has a wonderful and prolific history, and it's nice to see it being honored. So it's something I'm just really happy to see and greatly appreciate it.
all right, Joe, Arizona Cardinals or Chicago Cardinals or historian, right?
Yeah.
And you have the stamp of an NFL.
I
You
think
still there?
yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we got lost for a second.
you got bounced out for a moment, but anyway, I'll let you run. I know you're. Are you in Chicago now? Is that what it is?
I
Or are
am.
you,
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. And
so
it
I know
was
it's a little late.
a great, appreciate it having me. I had a rough start to the day. I woke up this morning and something smelled in the house, smelled worse than me even. Turned out,
Ouch.
a little garbage disposal wasn't working. So I had a guy come in.
Ah,
He said, it's broke. I said, what's going to cost? And it was like vacation all over again. How much you got? So he fixed the garbage disposal. And so I just need to take a shower again next month. But this has been a great way to end the day. And thank you for having me on your show again.
I got to one up you, Joe. I actually I put my own in. I replaced it and did
Ah,
it. I bought it and then did it. Yeah, I figured it out. But and it works. So that's all.
oh, great. I applaud you.
Nah, I just having fun with you. I probably would. I should have done what you did. Just get it over with, and
Yeah.
that stress.
Yeah.
I stressed like a week to try to do it all. So that's the
Oh,
give and take.
no. Mm.
All right, Joe. I appreciate it, man. Love you, and hopefully we'll see you back soon. Maybe if you can come back in the football season, you can actually watch a game and so forth at the stadium.
I would love to. Thanks so much. And keep up the great work and your positive outlook. And we all appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Joe. All right, Jones. Hey, have a good one. And it's warming up in Chicago.
It is 43 today. Can't beat that.
All right, buddy. Have a good night.
Take care. Thank you again.
Right.
Bye now.
All right. Okay. That was awesome. I had to bring it to you, and everything that what Joe did with the Cardinals and connecting with them in recent time, like a week or two ago. I don't know, but it's gone very well, and especially with all the turmoil with the Cardinals organization in the last month or so, this was a nice refresher, and just kind of feel a little bit better about the history of this organization. And nothing. There's a lot of ugliness to it, but it's what happens. There's a lot of organizations, even the great ones have ugliness. So, all right. Before we head out, I think I have one more little story for you too, but I'm probably just going to hold off on it. Yeah, let me hold off on it because I can use this next week itself. But I will say this about the Cardinals, and I'll say this about what's going on in recent days and how fans are reacting itself. The NFL will not force this guy to sell the team. This is not that harsh of what you're feeling because your emotions are involved. Okay. A fine, maybe a suspension, depending on the severity of how much it interfered. And is there evidence of interfering with operations and affecting other organizations, other teams, games, players, or whatever it may be that, is against the rules and things like that, right? Whatever the NFL can figure it out, but it has to be a lot of evidence for that. Okay. This is not Spygate. This is not this is something, not as heavy as that. Okay. And the Cardinals have denied it in many ways. And the other side didn't, they're accusing things, and there's a lot of motivation behind it on both sides to say what they said. But I don't expect this to go as far as everybody's thinking. The Cardinals are the NFL in a lot of ways. The Cardinals basically were part of the whole beginning of it, right? And the Bidwells came in a little bit later, but they were a major part of the growth in the establishment in the real big, birth of what it is today, because they kept it together. Charles Bidwell kept it together, And so did the other ownerships. And when things were tough in times or all around the league, somehow continue to fight through to make it happen. Okay. Players were not getting paid a whole lot. Guys were getting hurt, right? It wasn't known for the educated man to play this game. So there was a lot of things going on to keep this game survival. But Charles Bidwell and what he did to keep it going is a big part of the NFL of where they are today. And that part is so deeply rooted. It'd be very, very hard for this organization to be forced to sell a team when there's a guy in Dan Snyder that has a lot more heavy work too. But Dan may sell on his own because he just wants out of this clique kind of thing. Maybe that's what it is. Who knows what it is? But anyhow, all right. So we'll tap the brakes on this. And, we got a couple of weeks before the draft and the NFL draft, and we'll talk more about that next week. And I got more baseball. I had so much to talk about. I wanted to talk about baseball tonight, and I just, I can hold off. It's not like a now kind of moment thing, but I want to say goodnight to you also, and enjoy your holiday weekend. Happy Easter, and Jesus Christ rises and risen again and again. Right. All right, folks. Enjoy your Easter weekend and have a blessed one too. Cornelius Brad Hanna on Global Sports Broadcasting Network. We're going to get out of here. Thank you, Mark Mancini, for coming in. Joe Ziemba coming in, the Cardinals historian, talking about all about the Cardinals. Replay the show if you can. Share it if you can. Sponsors across the bottom of the screen. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. We'll see you soon. It's Hanna Time, Global Sports Broadcasting Network.